Careful what you wish for, Parker.
Hello, Peter.
What's going on, everyone? It's Sam. Welcome back to the channel. Here's my video talking about how Spider-Man No Way Home will be incorporating the multiverse into the movie, as well as how they explain the return of villains like Green Goblin, Ock, and Electro. So if you like Marvel, the MCU, comics, and everything in between, subscribe to the channel. And other than that, let's get into the video. Let's go. So based on what we've seen in the trailer, Doctor Strange's spell to erase Peter's identity crisis from the population ends up being completely wrecked by Peter's inability to not tamper with the spell. So this ends up creating a rift in space-time, and it's worth noting that this does take place after Loki, so the multiverse branches are already opened and the sacred timeline is completely exposed. And based on the updated MCU timeline order on Disney+, the events of WandaVision have already happened as it takes place 3 weeks after Endgame in late 2023. No Way Home picks up right after where Far From Home leaves off, which is summer of 2024, and then there's some sort of time jump that propels us near Christmas of 2024. So by this time, the multiverse has now been wrecked by 3 separate occasions, which would be Loki, WandaVision, and now Strange and Peter in No Way Home. This will allow for the interdimensional rifts for the No Way Home villains to cross over into, and eventually Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. A very minor spoiler warning for this next sentence, so skip over if you don't want to hear it. But there is a prison used by Doctor Strange to contain the villains who cross over. And you can actually see Lizard in one of these chambers very briefly in the trailer, so this fully and officially confirms the crossovers. And like Loki introduced the concept to us, Tobey and Andrew are essentially variants of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. The reason they are variants is because anything that is not main MCU timeline is a variant to its corresponding character. So even though Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man took place about 20 years ago in our own timeline within the MCU, it's different. So with Tom being the main Spider-Man of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they are the variants to him. Now where it gets confusing is if all of these characters, specifically villains, are the exact same versions of themselves right before they died, or if they are just similar variants from alternate timelines. So essentially they would be nearly identical to the versions that we saw from the Tobey trilogy and Garfield movies, but slightly different in appearance, and in their respective different timelines they either won or hadn't died yet in that alternate timeline. So let's dive into that a bit further. In one part of the trailer it looks like Sandman is actually protecting Peter. The significance of this is because Sandman has actually had a full character circle arc in Tobey's Spider-Man 3. And with the rumors of Sam Raimi helping on the writing and the claims that they didn't want to ruin any of those character arcs, it looks like it really could be the exact versions of these characters, maybe just before they had died. And you could say, how is this possible? But like we also learned in Loki, the multiverse is now open, and He Who Remains, and really the entire Loki show in general, refers to time as a past, present, and future all at once. Which is exactly what Michael Waldron, who wrote the Loki show, said. So theoretically, the multiverse crossover could have affected any point in time, allowing for these characters to return before death and continuing on their story, which would make sense in the form of Sandman in the scene in the trailer. Now, if this is the case and they are continuing their story in the MCU for a brief moment, Peter and Strange could find a way to return them to their respective universes in points in time where they could live out their story arcs from that moment, as if nothing ever changed from those previous movies. Alfred Molina, who plays Dr. Octopus, also explains that John Watts, the director of Spider-Man, said that it takes place right from the river scene for him. But in the trailer, it seems like he's still mad and menacing, and the Hello Peter actually sounds like he may be talking to Tobey's Spider-Man and not necessarily Tom's like the trailer makes it seem. At the end of Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock basically saves everyone by killing himself in a good cause. So it's interesting once again, what version is this? Is it right before his river death scene? Is it an alternate version? Who knows? What does back up the alternate variant theory, but extremely similar versions of the villains, is the updated looks. Jamie Foxx will not be blue like he confirmed, and we even saw that he had a more comic accurate yellow lightning look, which is very different from his Amazing Spider-Man 2 appearance. There's also a set photo leak of him with a construction vest on, and if you saw his Amazing Spider-Man 2 character, he was basically just a regular guy who worked as an electrical engineer. So once again, this kind of points to a very similar, but a variant new version. There's also news, or more like a fact now, that Green Goblin will have an updated and more comic accurate suit that mixes in the original Raimi mechanical suit. So like I was saying above, it depends on how bad this Doctor Strange spell messed with time and reality. When and at what point exactly does it pull these characters is the bigger question. My belief is they are nearly identical timelines, but the slightest variances that allow for these creative changes with suits and updated looks and so forth. It would not diminish any of their previous villainous roles, but if they're very truly similar besides the death part, they would still act and feel like the old characters. Or in the case of Sandman, maybe it's a mix of both. In terms of Tobey and Andrew's Spider-Man appearances, I do believe it'll be the exact same versions that we saw, but maybe slightly older now. It's tough to say, but I want to know exactly what you think of this idea. Comment below with your thoughts, and do you think that these are the exact same characters or slightly different variants? Follow me on Twitter at AnotherMarvelG for all news and updates, and check out some of my other No Way Home related videos. Other than that, I just want to say thank you. I'm Another Marvel Guy, and I'll catch y'all in a blip.